when you have an economic situation of the kind that we have, would mean that there are certain prior actions that are necessary. For example, dealing with resolving the problems of our multiple exchange rates is going to be key in that conversation. Now, if you're not prepared to have an open conversation that will be guided by analytical and empirical evidence, it would be tough for you to be able to look at IMF as your frontline provider of funds.
So is Eurobond the best option? Because Eurobond, the interest rate for Eurobond is about 7.5%, IMF 2.2%.
I hope you realize that Eurobond is not sufficient to solve the problem of the deficit that the government has to finance. The deficit that it has to finance is huge. So it's going to need multilateral financing. That's why the ADB has given 1 billion and released 600. The World Bank is still in the process of discussions of the reform program of the administration online to be able to give 1 billion once they are satisfied. The IMF sits there. You know, I think that if there's an understanding between them and the Nigerian government, there might be, but you can also, the Nigerian government can decide, I don't want an IMF loan. It's their choice. Then there are other bilateral partners. So the government is speaking to the Chinese. There are times when they speak to the Indians. So there are other bilateral sources of those kinds of money. So I need you to understand, Sheung, that this Eurobond is not the be-all and end-all of the options that the government has to be able to deal with its problem. And it has to be mindful of the cost of every loan that it takes, whether it's in the local market. In the local market, it shouldn't just worry about the cost of the loan it takes. It should worry about crowding out the private sector and thinning out the market from which the private sector can get credit. And then on the foreign side, it needs to be mindful that it doesn't take such loans, especially the foreign currency risk of the loans. It needs to earn commensurate amount of money to be able to service the loans and then to pay when it's time to pay.
I'm inquisitive to know why we're going for 1 billion, for example, why we couldn't have raised, gone past that ceiling to probably do a 5 or 10 or 7. But again,
you're talking about this kind of large money borrowing.
Because we have other countries, Ghana, we have Kuwait and some other countries, Egypt, Kenya are there, who have done way higher than that. And again, the question, it brings me to a very fundamental question. You are a policy expert, and when we wonder, this government looks so much like a government of the left of the center. They said they wanted to be sort of a welfareist government. And a big question would be, can we really afford that? The government said it wants to feed school children. The government says it wants to pay stipend to indigent Nigerians. Is it a good time to go into such policies?
You know, the social intervention program of the administration, they are very important because part of the problem, of the growth and unemployment and exclusion, people feeling like they were not getting the benefits of growth, was precisely that there was a level of social intervention that was necessary for the poorest and the most vulnerable in the society. So that social investment program is important, but it needs to be designed in the way that it has the maximum impact. So that's one. The other thing is that the best way to take people out of poverty is to grow your economy. That's the best way.
Are we doing that right now?
Right now we're in recession, so it means that our economy contracted by 1.5%, so we have negative growth. Now the important thing, which is why they called the 2017 budget the budget of recovery, means that it needs to do certain things right in order to take the economy back to a path of growth. Without a path of growth, how many people are you going to do welfare-based programs for? So you need people to grow. When economies grow, it means that the economy is expanding, and the economy begins to expand. You need to invest even more to ensure that sectors that can potentially be sources of growth come on board. Because the more rapidly your economy can expand, then it provides opportunities for jobs. The greatest agenda of the administration has to be jobs, jobs, and more jobs. And part of the problem that it finds itself in is that it needs to be able to have the additional resources other than what it generates today to fund those investments. And that is part of why, that looking at the debt strategy is important. So don't look at what Ghana went and got this, or Egypt went and that. Those are those countries. You need to be clear. What's my economic strategy? What am I targeting in terms of growth? How many jobs do I want to see private sector create in the economy? Where are the sources of this growth that can come on board? What do I need to do in terms of my macroeconomic stability? Which means, what do I need to do in my monetary policy, my fiscal policy? How do I organize institutions and the enabling framework of the economy for it to be that it would be an economy that presents the right incentive and signal to the private sector to drive this process of growth and expansion? And that's the key challenge that the government would be dealing with. I think that on a final note, there's not been a real public conversation on the economic strategy of the administration. That needs to happen. I know that they're working on an economic recovery plan. Yeah. Now, there needs to be a buy-in, a real conversation. The government needs to prepare everybody for what the thrust of its agenda is. But the government needs to really, I think the economic team needs to try one last time to see if the president would understand that the retrogression that we have seen in the economy can be clearly traced to the confusion with the FX policy.
Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, so much benefit of the knowledge and your experience. Many thanks for coming on the program. Always a pleasure as always.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, former Vice President of the World Bank and former Minister of Education, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, talking to us. We'll go on a short break. And when we come back, my second guest on the program will be talking to us. PDP is set for a merger. This is good for the party and opposition. That's next.